end of March, but we decided already.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the City of Delray Beach's workshop meeting scheduled for Tuesday, February 6, 2024 at 4 p.m. Please call the roll.
Mr. Frankel.
Present.
Mr. Long.
Present.
Mr. Boylston.
Present.
Ms. Burns.
Here.
Mayor Petrolia.
Here. All right, we've got two workshop items. The first is the presentation of the future public facilities on West Atlantic Avenue. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. And we've had an opportunity to visit with elected officials individually to discuss thoughts and considerations relative to the development and construction of the future public safety complex as it relates to the vision for West Atlantic Avenue. And of course, this was accomplished in collaboration with the Community Redevelopment Agency. We are very grateful for that by way of the inclusion of Jess Sowers, who is a local architect helping us to get to this place. And so we're now here in position to present publicly what that entails. And it did take under consideration community feedback and other logistics that are important for the overall project. With that, I'd like to go ahead and extend an invitation for Jess to come forward, offer the presentation publicly, and this is an opportunity for the City Commission to become comfortable with direction moving forward. And again, all points have been taken under consideration to make it happen.
Welcome, Jess.
Thank you, Mr. Moore, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. So we've got an interested group here of what's going to, what I came up with. So we were contracted, under a continuing contract with the CRA to analyze some of the, better pick that up, some of the sites, the CRA sites that they have on West Atlantic Avenue. So this is a Google aerial map of West Atlantic from Swinton to I-95. And what you see in purple are what the CRA owned parcels are, and what's in yellow are community facilities, City Hall, the tennis courts, the county courthouse, the police station, fire station. That's what you see in yellow. So kind of get your bearings. North is up. So initially, we were working on what we could do with the 600 block, 700 block, 800 block, and in a very high level sketching to scale what could fit, what can we put on these lots. So initially, we came up with, and does this have a pointer? Well, oh, there we go. This is the hotel. And this is 800 block, 700 block, and 600 block. So we did a quick analysis, how many units we could fit, residential units and retail, et cetera. And as you know, it's all based upon parking. And so we did that. And then as time evolved, it came up when the commission and community and the bond referendum, what do we do with the police station? So we did a quick analysis of what would fit on the 600 block for a police station, and can it fit? So yes, it can. We used a needs assessment done several years ago. And the existing police has about 40,000 square feet of facilities, and the needs assessment has about 150,000 square feet. So to fit this on, we need a parking garage that's in the back that's shown in gray. We have a 3-story above ground administrative offices, and the training and that's the difference in the big jump in the square footage is in the training. There's 40,000 square feet of training that they don't currently have on this site, and special vehicle parking. All that would go below grade in this scenario. Then we started looking at, well, can it fit on the existing site? And what you see in the green, let me try pointing again. Yeah. So this is the county courthouse, is in this location. This is the existing fire station site. And I've got a blow up that shows you how we can do that and still keep the, not have to relocate the police off-site, et cetera. So what this does is, yes, we can fit the police station, which is in the kind of purpley color here, and a parking garage. and meet their needs assessment that was done several years ago. Then we started looking at, and this is on community facilities. So one of the good things is that we don't have to do rezoning. We can keep the zoning. We keep the community facilities together with the courthouse. Then I had this green leftover space, and it's like, what happens if we put the police station on
mean the
that
fire?
site?
You mean the fire?
I'm sorry, the fire station on that site. So, and then we would have a shared parking garage. Then that opens up this area. Oops. Come on, there we go. This is tricky. The existing fire station site for a mixed-use project. And what this does is now we get to activate Fifth Avenue. And we could have a more of a ceremonial entrance. We can match the park here on the south side and pick up those detailing. So now we begin to activate the street. We get retail on this frontage with some residential above, and this could be surface parking. So in this scenario, you get about 20 residential units with about 20,000 square feet of retail, and that's without having to do a garage. So I was trying to keep that as efficient as possible. So now, how do we keep the fire or the police on site? So this existing survey, and we're kind of turned here. So north is to the right. Atlantic Avenue is on the right side of the page. So basically, we would leave the police in the administrative, but we would lose the range. And we would start with building the 40,000 square feet, phase one, underground, for the training. Then this would be a 3-story above ground police station for administrative services. And then to the left, we're showing about a 25-foot setback for landscaping, et cetera, for the residents to the south. In the meantime, there's plenty of parking associated with the administrative. We have to use the temporary parking. We have to find temporary parking for them somewhere else while this construction is going on. Then the next phase is they would move out of the existing facility into the new 3-story building with the underground training. Then we start with the underground parking for the special vehicles, and then we finish out the garage. Access to the police could be from the backside, which is, whoops, too early, which would be back from off of First. So the courthouse is down here, and their existing entrance to their judges and secure parking is all along this side. So what's left over, let me go back. So that leaves this green space. And then what can we do with that green space? So it could be utilized as retail or something like that, but I was thinking that if we could keep community facilities on the same lot, can that happen? And then this would get us, what's in red, is a 5-bay fire station. This is shown 2 stories, but we could actually do a 3rd story and do an EOC. There's plenty of, the bottom line is, at the high level, plenty of room to put both of these facilities on this site. And that opens up the 600 block and the existing fire station site for mixed use, retail, residential, et cetera. I think that's really the big takeaway, is keeping it on this site to open up the other parcels for better use. One other thing is there is a, let's see, a 30-foot conveyance. It's a deeded easement that we need to maintain along the front on Atlantic Avenue. And that could be a nice lineal park, et cetera, so help set the stage on Atlantic Avenue. So with that, any questions?
Sure. Let's start with Vice Mayor.
I know we had reviewed this before, and this was like the big surprise is being able to put this all in one complex. In one of the drawings that you shared with us, you had some activation potentially on Atlantic Avenue. Is that? I don't see that in this.
That is, that's the next level when we actually, assuming that the fire station does go here.
Right.
We can, because right now I'm showing about 45,000 square feet in this plan. One of the concerns is if it's an EOC center, there's going to be a discussion of if we have a restaurant or something next to an EOC center,
Right.
is there a potential fire? Is there a potential issue with that conflict?
Sure. Okay.
So, there's a lot of things we can do there.
Okay.
And we can talk about if it's not an EOC center, it may not be as big of a deal to have an activation of retail, but maybe it's just basic retail and no restaurant allowed to keep that activation.
Or maybe it's some other kind of linear park activation or something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's the only question I had. That's the only change I saw.
Very good. Commissioner Burns?
No questions.
Okay, Commissioner Frankel?
No questions. It was a great presentation today and the one a couple weeks ago.
Deputy Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I think I asked all mine during the initial review. But thank you. Great presentation.
The only thing that I have a question about, and this might not be your purview, it might be the chief's purview. The fact that you have all vehicles now, emergency and police, kind of coming and going off of 2 Street, Southwest 4th and Southwest, is it 3rd, I think? Is that going to be a problem? Is that problematic, especially when you're talking about emergency vehicles for the fire rescue? Just curious if it impedes each other.
There we go. I turned it off. Ma'am, I don't think so. I think that we'll be fine. Normally, the police officers are busy when they're leaving the station at their crew change, and as you know, our calls come in periodically. Wherever, we'll be fine.
Okay, sounds good. And the only other question that I had was the exact question that the Vice Mayor had, which was the activation on that front end, because the whole idea of this was to increase the pedestrian travel and just activity along West Atlantic, and the whole idea of, when we were talking about it, I just want to make sure that this is on the record, we have dead spaces up and down Atlantic Avenue west of Swinton. We've got the library, the courthouse, police, fire on the other side, and what we wanted to do was to not have as many governmental properties fronting Atlantic so that we can have some passing traffic to draw people down towards the West Atlantic as that gets developed. And so this actually would do that, especially if we do have some sort of an activation spot in the front, and it opens up entirely the where the footprint where the fire station is currently, that we can actually do something to be able to draw more traffic in that direction, pedestrian traffic. So it just makes sense to me from a futuristic plan to do that, and I appreciate the presentation and the great work that went into this, because it was a concept that I hadn't thought of, and when you brought it to our attention, to mine anyway, I was pleasantly surprised and thought this is something I could definitely get behind. So thank you for that, Jess. Anything else?
Mayor, I just wanted to add, and I know most of you are aware of this, but there is a deed restriction on that property. And so I think that was a concern with potentially having a restaurant, in addition to the chief's concerns, that it has to be for a public purpose. It's a very specific deed restriction. I can't tell right now if it's over the whole property. Obviously, if there's a police station and a fire station, there's no issue. But that sort of activation with restaurants and things like that, that could potentially create an issue. If that's something the commission's interested in, we would look into it further. But to have that open space and the fire station and the police station is definitely not an issue.
Well, actually, I would like you to look into it. Here's the reason why. Because if we took just a small, we don't need to have a big restaurant there or something to that effect. I'm thinking of something small like a coffee shop. It would be conducive to the police and fire officers that are off or on duty or doing work or whatever. They could go in and sit down and do. It'll actually attract other people, and if we have some sort of a nice park in front of that, I think that it would be an extremely active spot that, again, will pull interest in from the road to making people think this is a place that I can, stop and and go to. So anyway, so it might be something, even if it's just a small little something that attracts people, I think it might not be a bad idea to consider.
As we move forward, we'll get title
Okay.
opinions and we can check it out.
Sure. All right, very good. Anything else? That looks like it. Thank you so very
Thank
much.
you.
And we're going to move on to our second workshop item, which is consideration of the, you don't need anything, it's just a discussion, correct? Yeah. Consideration of the electronic school zone speed enforcement.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I may.
Yes.
Getting back to the previous item, I think it would be appropriate to secure your consensus with respect to
Yeah, I think-
general support in this regard.
Good
And we
idea.
all think it makes sense
I
that
think
is our
we're all-
recommendation.
yeah.
And what's great about that, it does take under consideration the previous public feedback and thoughts and considerations, as well as the piece relative to the restrictive,
Yeah,
the
I think-
derestriction, I should say.
I think
So
you
with
have
that would be
unanimous
great.
consent to move forward and see where this takes us, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And so for the second item, I provided a written update about this a number of months ago relative to an action taken by the Florida State Legislature effective July 1st, 2023, whereby municipalities now enjoy the ability to execute school zone speed enforcement strategies, electronic and otherwise. And while the city of Delray Beach has not yet contemplated or directed any specific project or program in terms of how this will work for our community, our interest is to engage with the city commission so as to garner your feedback, but primarily to give you an opportunity to receive background and information as to what opportunities are in fact available and why. With that, we have leadership of the Office of the Chief of Police, notably Chief of Police himself, Russ Major members of his team, Lieutenant Ferrari, and Assistant Chief of Police, Jeff Razor. Chief Major, if you would, please.
Thank you. 657 was introduced last year, around July 1st. It passed. It's in layman's terms, it's a camera-equipped radar detection system, primarily for school zones. We come before you today to see if this is something that the city is interested in partaking in. I think it's an effective use of resources. It allows us to do multitask type scenarios where police officers can be at one location and the speed zone detection devices operate independent of an actual police officer running them. They're affixed to a pole, and it allows for diversity with regard to work. I'm going to let Lieutenant Ferrari and Assistant Chief Razor kick it off, but I just want to give you a brief overview of the bill and let you know that this is something that if you all deem something that we can accept, we definitely support it. But of course, it is your ultimate decision. Gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. On the next slide, there's a short video that will kind of give a brief overview of what it's all about. That we
For more than 3 decades.
Go ahead, man. Thank you.
For more than 3 decades. For more than 3 decades, speeding has been involved in approximately 1/2 of all motor vehicle fatalities. Speeding endangers not only the life of the speeder, but all the people on the road around them. Florida is the most dangerous state for pedestrians. To address this, the Florida legislature passed a bipartisan law, HB 657, to stop egregious speeding in school zones. It's a statewide law. Speed may be enforced only when school is in session, and a half hour before classes start, during, and a half hour after school ends. Cameras can only be placed in designated school zones. Violations are issued for speeds exceeding posted speed limit by 10 miles per hour, and signs must be posted prior to the camera location. The municipality or county must conduct a public awareness campaign and issue warning for a period of 30 days prior to commencing enforcement. There's a $100 civil penalty. 60% of the fine is retained by the issuing county or municipality and must be used for public safety, while 40% is divided between various state programs.
So I cut out the rest of the video because the rest of the video is specific to a certain vendor. And we're not here to select a vendor tonight, but rather just give you guys information. So as the law states, photo enforcement occurs 30 minutes before the start of school to 30 minutes to the end of school. There is a threshold where the state law says that the speed has to be 10 miles per hour or more over the speed limit. Talking to our counterparts in other parts of the state that are implemented this program or researching the program, their threshold is going to be 11 miles per hour or more. So when the beacons are blinking, or during that school zone period when the speed is 20 miles per hour, a violator would be issued a violation if they're going 31 miles per hour or greater. And then during the rest of the school day, if the speed limit is 30 miles per hour, if they're going 41 miles per hour or greater, they'd be issued that violation. And then at the end, 30 minutes after school, the cameras are turned off. The cameras would be programmed, recognizing half days at school, holidays when school's not in session. The cameras are only active during a school day. Next slide, please. So where would the cameras be placed? So before cameras are placed anywhere, whatever vendor we select by law, they have to go out and do a traffic study and to identify if there's a speed problem in that area. So listed here is not only our public schools, but it also applies to private schools in our area as well. So it could be private and public where speed was identified as an issue. Next slide. Back one, I believe. So what I have here is whenever a violation is issued, there's work that goes on in the back end. Depending on the vendor, some vendors do a lot of the analytic work or the administrative work on the back end. Some vendors require us to do all that administrative work. But at the end of the day, before any violation is issued to any violator, a police officer or a traffic enforcement officer has to touch every single ticket, meaning they have to go into the back end of the program and verify that the license plate that was run matches the license plate that's on that vehicle. So if it comes back, if a red Honda Accord goes through the past the camera at excessive speed, and the registered vehicle or the registered information comes back to a green Tahoe, that violation is invalid. So someone has to verify, in fact, that that information matches.
If I could just interject for a minute too, it's also being verified in two different ways. It's being verified by time distance on the camera along with radar. Different than if a traffic enforcement officer is simply using radar.
So then talking about the penalty. The penalty's, back one. The penalty is $100. It's issued as a violation, not as a uniform traffic citation. It's a $100 fine. $60 is retained by the city. The way most of these vendors that we had spoken to, they work, they cover all the upfront costs, the installation, the hardware, etc., and they take a percentage of that $60 fee that's retained by the city. It seems like the industry standards between 30 and 40%, depending on how much work they do on the back end, if they do the administrative work or not. So the city would retain the balance of that 60% minus that fee, because there's no upfront cost to the city. 3% goes to FDLE, to the Criminal Justice Training Fund, to help pay for training for officers. 12% is retained by the district, school district for school safety initiatives. 5% goes to School Crossing Guard Recruitment and Retention Fund, and 20% goes to the general fund for the state of Florida. Next slide, please.
Sensitive.
Yep. Sorry.
It's very sensitive.
And then we just highlighted some of the pros and cons with the program. Pros being improved safety in the school zone, slows people down. The purpose is to correct driver behavior and slow people down. It does provide revenue for public safety initiatives if violations are issued. By design, the technology should modify driving behavior. Depending on the solution that's chosen, there's no upfront cost to the municipality. Violations are issued the way we would set it would be in excess of 11 miles per hour or more. One of the comparisons that keep coming up when we talk to the general public is everyone goes back to red light cameras. Red light cameras are totally different. It's not something that we're advocating for by any means. But remember, a red light camera, the moment that light turns red, a nanosecond after that, you go over that crossbar, the camera is issuing you a violation. Where here, there's a threshold of 11 miles per hour, meaning that, again, if the speed limit's 20 miles per hour, you have to be going 11 miles per hour or more in order to get the violation to trigger the camera. Enforcement only occurs during school time hours. It's not a 24-hour measuring device.
Operation.
Yep.
It doesn't during summers, no school. It's not operational.
And as the chief said earlier, it allows the officers to focus their attention in other areas to address other violations, because the cameras are doing the work for us of slowing people down and correcting behavior. And I mentioned here that the fine issued is significantly less than what a uniform traffic citation would cost if an officer issued a violation for the same infraction. Some of the cons, the violation is is issued to the registered owner of the vehicle and not the person driving the vehicle. However, if a vehicle gets issued a violation and the registered owner says, I wasn't driving that car, there is a method to deal with that. There is an affidavit that you're signing under the perjury of law, and it has to be notarized stating that you weren't driving the vehicle, and you can transfer that liability to another party. Another con is the build-out time. I know recently Miami-Dade County signed on with 200 schools in the Dade County area, so I would anticipate that the build-out time is going to be rather slow because of hardware and whatnot. So speaking to some of the vendors, it seems like if we were to sign a contract with any one of these vendors, it'd probably be 6 months before we're operational, before we can start that 30-day warning period. Again, as mentioned, a sworn law enforcement officer or a traffic infraction officer would have to review it, each violation. Again, it takes about a minute per violation. And then it may take several violations to correct driving behavior before, that problem is resolved. Questions?
All right, great. Thank you so much for the presentation. We'll start with Deputy Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Lieutenant Ferrari. Great question. Great presentation. So I wanted to ask, since these aren't standard traffic citations and they're violations, there wouldn't be any points attached to these.
Correct. So it's
Right.
issued as a violation. It's issued like a city code violation at first. If the violation isn't paid, then it would turn to a uniform traffic violation or a traffic citation, and then moved over to the county court.
Got it. Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Commissioner Franco.
Thank you. Assistant, yeah, exactly. Assistant Chief, you talked about verification.
Yes, sir.
Which of the vendors that you've spoken to can identify the driver of the vehicle?
None of the, and it doesn't identify the driver.
Yeah, so
It's similar to what you would do is at a toll road.
No, it's
If you go on the turnpike
it's similar
and you
to a
go
red
through
light
the-
camera ticket.
It a little bit different because a red light camera ticket doesn't allow you to switch tickets if the owner of the vehicle's able to identify the driver and
No,
then
they
fill out an
have
affidavit.
the affidavit thing. They do.
I haven't seen that yet.
Well, because I go to the courthouse every once in a while, I've seen it.
Okay.
Let me tell you what happens. If I take Assistant Chief Razor's car, and I'm flying down Lake Ida Road, and I'm going 11 miles per hour or more, even though that would be the regular speed limit, he would get the ticket. I wouldn't. And let me tell you what the problem is in the city. Because I went through some of my old emails. And Missy, I see you back there. From some of my new colleagues, I've been asking why our city doesn't have flashing yellow lights in front of our schools to identify drivers. School's in session, you have to slow down. Has anyone seen any of those yellow
There is
flashing
one
lights?
over at Pine Grove.
We're making progress.
One
That's
of,
great.
one of the nice things about this is the infrastructure, including signs, lights, cameras, is all paid for by the company.
Well, let me tell you what else is out there. People get these civil citations for whatever reason. They don't get notified about them, so other people's license gets suspended, and they have to go through an entire process. Isn't that correct?
That could be the case.
Okay. So it's not just a civil citation; it advances towards a criminal matter in some cases, not all cases,
In some.
but in some. And some of our neighbors, they have a bad reputation because of some of these situations that are going on.
I think the threshold camera, as Lieutenant Ferrari said, with the red light cameras compared to this is greatly different.
Well, I would argue because these are not being activated yet, and they're going to be. And then I think you'll have a similar situation. I think the answer is to get in all of our schools the yellow flashing lights identifying you have to slow down, schools in session. Now, after you get that, maybe this would be something to go forward with, and maybe if they have the technology to show who the driver of the vehicle is, but I just can't support such a program until that would be out there.
I just want you to understand, though, prior to this being activated, the lights, signs, and cameras would have to be in place,
Yeah, but
paid for by the company.
so I've only been, I only could find an email from 2021, so I know it's just, just like yesterday. But we've been asking with my colleagues.
No,
for
I
this.
understand.
And I'm not,
And I
pointing
as
any
you know,
blame.
I was a traffic officer. I rode a motorcycle in
Yeah.
the city for 6 years. I've issued hundreds of tickets in school zones.
Right.
You are correct. They should all have lights.
and I used to every morning drive to Lake Island in Congress, go to CrossFit, and a lot of times I would forget school's in session, and I did it on a regular basis. If there were yellow flashing lights, I think it would make a huge difference, and I think that would be the avenue.
I agree. I think it would be a deterrent for people to slow down. But there's always going to be speeders.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell you we targeted areas that we know there were speeders, and we were out there for 30 days straight. I take it just as many people on day 1 as I did day 30. And they knew we were there.
Well, find technology that can put a driver's face behind the wheel, and I think
That is definitely a shortcoming of this. I think one of the things that the companies have provided is this affidavit. I didn't know that Boynton was doing that. I assume that's who you're referring
No.
to. That Boynton was doing it. I have not seen that. But this centers around something I think is important. As a traffic investigator, speed is an issue. You know, and school safety is a huge issue. So.
I agree, but I also think that this is be a situation that you have to identify the driver of the car, and not the owner of the vehicle bears responsibility. But I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Burns?
Yes. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm surmising that in the event that there's a lawsuit, the city is sued, or is the vendor sued?
That would probably depend on our contract with the vendor. If the city commission directs staff to move forward with something like this, we would probably insist that indemnification be a part of the agreement, where I would be able to pick the attorney to defend the city, and they would have to pay the bill. More likely than not, because this is such a new law, this probably will be contested in court, like most new laws are, for constitutionality and all the other issues that went along with the red light cameras. So to protect the city, we would require an indemnification. And if they weren't able to agree to that, then if we still brought the contract to the commission, I would let you know my concerns with it.
And certainly, although it's new to Florida, through our research, we know that Georgia's been running this for 5 years in their cities.
Another reason not to vote for it.
Georgia and Arizona are the two states using it the most.
Sorry, I'm joking.
Go ahead. You've got the floor.
One last question. Gosh. So 60% comes back to the city of the fee.
It averages about $39 a ticket.
That comes back to the city,
Yes,
because the vendor
Because
also...
the vendor's laying out the millions of dollars for the infrastructure.
Right, and so the
They're
vendor...
putting out all the front costs.
So
the
how
city's
is
not
that
doing anything.
60% of $100?
It's not. And
Okay,
just
so
to be-
why are you advertising that it is?
Just to be clear, we have not entered into a contract
Correct.
with anybody,
And that
so
is
that
correct.
is something that's going to be negotiated.
Negotiated.
But it says it on here.
The statute says that out of the $100, the city can get up to $60.
Okay,
Up
thank
to
you.
60%.
We will negotiate
Right.
an agreement with the vendor, because they're going to want to get paid as well.
There was
So that's the
Correct.
most that we could collect if we didn't have a vendor who was doing this service for us.
Right, it makes sense. Or we invest in all of this.
Correct,
and
correct,
we
yes,
get to keep
yes.
the full 60%.
But
Right.
just to be clear, we don't have an agreement with anybody,
Yeah,
and there
understood,
would be a
And I
solicitation.
apologize for the misunderstanding.
So
ahead.
just to be clear, the 40% goes to the other entities, the 60% is split somehow with the vendor and the city.
Correct.
Got it, okay.
Depending on the
No
contract.
questions.
Vice Mayor?
If we put in, as Commissioner Frankel calls it, the flashing yellow lights, right? Do you feel like you would no longer have to patrol school zones for speeders? That would be it? That would
be
take care of it?
correct. That would be correct. Because it's automatically being done.
No,
No,
not
just
this
the yellow
system.
flashing
Just the
lights.
yellow flashing lights.
No.
No.
Okay.
As Commissioner Frankel
So-
knows, I was out at Carver, who has
Okay.
flashing lights, and wrote
And-
hundreds of tickets.
I know that answer because I've seen it. I've spent plenty of time
Yes.
in different school zones, dropping off kids, picking up kids.
Absolutely.
And while I'm sure there is a reduction
They're
you're
still gonna
still
be
going to have to be out
violators.
there. And that's really the savings, right? Yeah, we get the 60, 40%, the $39, whatever it ends up being. But really, by you guys being able to be somewhere else and not sitting there and policing that every single morning in every one of our schools, it is an absolute issue. We get complaints all the time in regards to speeding in our city, not just in school zones, but through neighborhoods, near parks. I mean, the list goes on. So I am very much in favor of leveraging this type of technology to not only save money for the taxpayers, but also to keep our children safe.
And we would be acting within the law, the scope of the law. We're not just arbitrarily shooting from the hip and issuing citations because there's nothing supporting it. The law is supporting it. It doesn't require the identification. Although I understand Commissioner Frankel is not a fan, and even if we issued the citation ourselves, they can still take it to court and still argue it, and the lawyers can still do their thing. So,
Right.
But at least you know who the driver is.
You do know who the driver is. But we got the violation on the vehicle, which is consistent with what the law allows for.
Yeah. Yep.
And keep in mind, I mean, there's multiple violations that happen where the driver's not identified. You park in a handicap spot, the vehicle's getting, right, but the vehicle's getting the fine. You go through a toll, the vehicle's getting a fine. And the list goes on and on where a vehicle's getting a fine versus the driver.
Anything else, sir?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. So I have to tell you, I've got some issues with this as well. Listen, I have kids who went to school. I understand what we're talking about here, but I think this is going to end up being very difficult for citizens and drivers alike. Those that don't mean to drive too fast are going to get these tickets. And here's the reason why. When you're driving through a school zone and you're 1 mile over that zone, what you thought was the right speed, 30, you're getting a ticket.
It's 11 miles per hour over.
No. If it's a school zone, there's no flashing light, you make a mistake, you don't see anything, and you're not familiar or are familiar, but you just forgot, and you are zipping through the zone at the regular 30 mile an hour, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you realize, oh my gosh, it's a school zone. I've done it, okay? And I put on my brakes. I'm getting a ticket because guess what? That camera is going to be there taking a flash at every single person that makes that mistake. Every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That's a problem.
We do control the threshold too. It can be 11, it could be 12,
Right,
it
but
could be 15.
it's just the basis of it
No, I
is
understand what you're
just,
saying.
it doesn't
Yes.
sit well with me. Because what you have now is you have a camera that's making decisions that a police officer would normally make.
Yep.
Okay? And there's no flexibility except for whatever you put into that camera. And what I'm trying to say to you is that we are not perfect people. I'm not perfect. Listen, when my sons got their licenses, and they were working down in, both of them, working down in Publix off of Federal Highway in Boynton Beach, okay, that nasty little camera, got both of them a day apart, okay? And it was because they were new drivers, didn't quite anticipate exactly where they could be going through a light, and so proceeded with the light changing, and they got tickets. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. If it had been a cop, they probably wouldn't even have pulled them over. Or if they did, they probably would have said, all right, listen, guys, you guys need to learn by this. There's zero room for learning with respect to those types of things happening to kids today.
I totally
And what
agree.
I'm trying to say
Discretion
is that
is
I
taken out of
can,
the
and I
play.
can tell you that's exactly what's going to happen here. The discretion is gone. And what we're going to have are a lot of very unhappy people when they realize that if they were making a mistake and put on that brake because they didn't realize it, they're getting that ticket. They're getting that ticket.
Well, then,
And I just have to tell you, I prefer to do exactly what my colleague says. Get those flashing lights up. When I see that flashing light coming up on me, I'm slowing down, I get it, and I'm slowing down for that. And I know that this is part of it, but one of the things that we haven't got is we don't have that, and if those flashing lights are put on, it will help to slow people down. I think that you're probably I know you said you're you're giving out tickets left and right. And I don't like that happening either, but I also don't like the fact that this is non-discretionary. It's just you're getting a ticket. And so I do have an issue with it.
And a follow-up question to that: if I was to get a ticket going through a school zone at 35 miles per hour, what was the cost of that ticket?
$306.
So you're kind of getting a break, aren't you? At $100.
Not necessarily.
No.
Why?
What if the ticket gets lost, you have no notice of it, your license gets suspended?
Now it becomes
Well, that could happen with the $350 ticket as well.
No, because you're
Because you're
being
being
handed the
handed it.
ticket
You're being pulled over and handed the ticket. It's
to
different.
the driver, the actual
Right.
driver.
Right.
If I drive your car and I speed through a school
Okay,
zone,
I
and
know
it
you're
gets
concerned
lost,
regarding other people driving other people's cars.
I've
like,
seen it
like
happen.
let's pass that.
But I have seen it.
I know.
It's a
I know.
nightmare
It's
for
not a
It happens all the time.
It's not a
It's all the
concern for
time.
me not to do that. Just like it's not a concern to give tickets for Sun Pass just because you don't know who's driving the car
seen
and
that
running
nightmare
tolls.
too.
I know. I that's not a concern for me. What I was asking though is, it's a $350 ticket. So just in regards to because I understand what the mayor's saying, right? Oh man, I can't believe it. I accidentally did it, and then you guys can say, hey, this time we're going to let you off with a warning. Well, now it's like, hey, it kind of averages out, right? If you do it a few times, you can do it 4 times before you're paying as much as like getting an actual ticket.
And no points on your license.
And no points on your license. So again, I hear you, Mayor. I disagree with Mr. Frankel's concerns. It's not a concern of mine, but I do hear you, Mayor. But I think that difference of 350 and 100 is makes the point. So I'm in favor.
If I could chime in real quick,
Yeah.
I think the thing that's been left out of this conversation is safety, the safety of our children and parents in school zones, which is the primary reason we're doing this, right? No system's going to be perfect, right? There's going to be some issues with really any system that we implement. And if we're choosing between maybe avoiding a child getting injured or a parent getting into an accident because of speeders coming through, but on the other side of that, maybe there's a handful of issues or people don't get their ticket right away, or the wrong person's driving and they have to go through a lengthy affidavit process, and it's a hassle for a few folks. I'm willing to make that trade-off if it means that we're going to avoid a serious incident with a child at one of our schools potentially. And it doesn't seem like these two things are mutually exclusive, that like what you guys mentioned, the flashing yellow lights, I mean, that's going to be part of this, right? So they are going to have that warning before they go through that speed zone. They have an 11 mile per hour buffer, so it's not they go 1 mile over the posted speed limit and they get a ticket. They could go 6 miles, 7 miles, 8 miles, 10 miles over and still not get a ticket. So there is some leeway built into the system, it sounds like, and they're not getting a regular ticket. They're not getting points. They're not getting a full price ticket. They're getting a $100 ticket. So how else do we change behavior if we're not going to have something punitive? I mean, a great example is the trucks downtown, right? We had a whole issue with big trucks coming downtown where they don't belong. I know that's an issue you care about, Commissioner. And so how did you guys finally deal with the truck issue downtown?
They gave tickets. We understand that. We don't need to get into that.
So yeah, we do, because it's the same thing, right? How do you change behaviors? You have to issue tickets.
No. Let me explain something to you, something that's a little bit different, okay? What you're saying is that changes behavior. We just heard from the officer who hands out hundreds of tickets still. What the difference is going to be more than
If there was a
hundreds of
cop
tickets,
sitting there
because-
every day and they knew they were going to get a ticket, I bet it would change their behavior.
Well,
This is the equivalent of that.
that's not what he said. He said he was there and they saw him and they still were speeding. So that's not changing the behavior.
He'll be somewhere else now.
What this is this is a way to be able to take more money and put it into something else, a vendor, and we get a little piece of the action back. And
It's
listen,
a way to enforce an existing law.
All right.
Hey, let's
Just happens to be used for public safety.
It seems like we all know where we're at this.
Yeah, let's just do it.
Yeah.
Well, there's no vote. I
Another
think we
question?
need to hear from Commissioner Burns.
Yeah, we did, but she's
I just want to know, what is the cost to the city?
Zero.
Oh, okay.
And why do you think that is?
because they're
Because the
making money.
vendor is doing it to make a lot of money.
That's right.
Well, we could also
I'm
install all the
taxpayers.
technology, and then
We should have officers.
And-
Well, first of
and then
all,
we'd
we
get
should
the
have
60%.
The school board was supposed to, since 2021, put yellow flashing lights at our schools. Missy, how's that coming?
She's going to give you an update.
Oh, good.
She was ready.
Yeah. I can't believe it's been since 2021.
Good afternoon, Missy Barletto, Public Works Director. I'm happy to tell you that all of those flashing school lights have been installed, except for the ones that you really, really wanted on Lake Ida Road, which our permit application to the county was denied because there is not actually a school crossing along Lake Ida Road at that place. The offer that we got back from the school board was that if we would establish a school crossing there and hire crossing guards at the city's expense, they would consider it.
There you go.
Yeah, sure.
Missy, where is there not a school crossing?
Cross it, Lake Ida.
Across
Where-
Lake Ida Road.
In front of the police, the
Fire.
fire station, that's not a school crossing?
No, ma'am.
Is it because of the distance from the school? I presume that's probably what it is.
I would have to go back into my ancient memory bank to figure
probably has something to
exactly.
do
I
with that.
think
'Cause we're
referring to two
talking
different
5 years
locations.
ago.
We're Spady versus Banyan Creek.
Oh, I'm
I don't know if
thinking
you're
Banyan
referring
I'm
to
thinking
Spady.
Banyan
Oh,
Creek.
you're
Yeah.
This is Adam.
I'm thinking Banyan Creek.
No, it was two.
At Lake Ida
no, he had asked
and-
previously. He had asked for a school crossing
At Spade.
Spade.
Gotcha.
And there is not one there. And at across Lake Ida Road on Barwick, it's just it's just a straight cross. It's not a school crossing there either.
All right, so you're gonna need direction? I think you have it all except for
I
one.
don't think we do.
No, I mean, there's,
So Commissioner Burns, is this something that you would like to see us move forward with?
Yes.
Okay,
We have it.
we have it.
all right, very good.
It's that easy.
Okay, anything else? Close out
No,
this
ma'am.
meeting. Meeting adjourned.